Hi, I'm Dan Herbert, course developer and instructor at Point Blank. In this video we're going to take a more detailed look at the motion curve section of Form. This tutorial video gives you a flavour of what you can expect on our music production courses in London, Los Angeles and online. Find out more about our courses at www.pointblankmusicschool.com. So the motion curve section is essentially a complex LFO which controls the playback of the sample loaded into Form, and interestingly can also be used as an additional modulation source. So as we saw from the first video in this series, we can load audio files from your hard drive. You'll find a samples folder within the Form directory and you can use these, and you can just drag and drop them onto the interface. What's important, however, is you click the load sample button and that will analyze the sample, and it also tracks the pitch components. You can see that's represented by this white line here. This is used to control the pitch of the additive oscillator unless you press the flatten pitch button, and it's also available as another modulation source for parameters, and like the motion curve can be accessed through modulation. So if I just come here, go to macro, you'll find pitch curve and motion curve, and then you can just turn up the modulation amount. So let me just reset the sound, and I'm going to load in an audio file, and this audio file counts from 1 through to 4, and it's going to make it much clearer how the curve editor actually works. So let's go into it, and I'm going to press a key on the keyboard.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So it just counts from 1 through to 4. So it's a bar loop. And what we can see here is the waveform represented vertically, and the line scrolls across horizontally. So initially this is quite confusing.
3, 4.
Okay, and we've got this line which indicates the playback. When it's at the bottom, that's the beginning of the file. When it's at the top, that's the end of the file. So if I move this segment range down to here, this will only play across the first word, which is 1.
1.
And that takes a whole bar to do it. Let's split this. So we've now got 2 segments, and I'm going to move this one up to, let's say, 4.
1, 4.
And if we want to, we could split this again. And we can just change the order of it. It's basic editing, but the interesting thing here is obviously we can affect the actual playback speed.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. Also, what we can do is we can change the shape of this curve. So we've got a range of different shapes. If I choose the flat line, that's essentially freezing the sound, like extreme time stretching.
4.
Or if we go back to this line, the linear shape, and adjust the shape parameter, I can speed it up at the beginning. And we get those kind of interesting time stretching textures.
1, 2, 3.
And that speeds up towards the end. And you've got a variety of different shapes depending on what you want to achieve. If you double click, then that resets it. There's some additional parameters up here. So for example, we can flip the waveform and that will play this word backwards.
No, 2, 3, 4.
The other parameters here, phase and frequency, you will find aren't available unless you choose, for example, the repeating patterns here. So now I've got the frequency control and I can snap that, so it's always going to be in time.
No, 2, 3, 4. No, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, and you've also got the phase, so you can adjust the starting point of the waveform. I'd always suggest you leave the grid snap on when editing, and the other thing to look out for as well is the length. Okay, that should be on 1 unless you're doing something specifically longer or you're not that fussed how it syncs up. You can do some quite interesting things with kind of polyrhythms by putting it to specific values. If we want the audio to loop round and round, you'll notice across the top we've got a loop brace. To enable that, click this loop button here.
No, 2, 3, 4. No, 2, 3, 4. No.
So it's really easy to create a range of different kind of rhythmic sounds as well as kind of textural sounds. To get kind of buzzier textures, then you want to shrink these right down, and we can zoom in just by clicking on your scroll bar and dragging to the left. And now,
2, 3, 4.
and then you can kind of explore.
2, 3, 4.
You might have seen there as I clicked in the middle and dragged to the left and right, again that expands out the segment range. To get back to normal zoom, just double click and we're back to as it starts. Incidentally, with the loop range as well, if let's just insert another segment, it basically duplicates the segment to, I said, to the left. If you want to make the loop brace match it, just double click. But as I said, watch that length. It might be you don't want that to be 1.25. Okay, we can delete these segments, select it, hit delete. Okay, and the loop brace readjusts itself. So that's the basic principle of how the curve editor works. What I'm going to do is reset the sound, and let's get a bit more creative and create a kind of buzzy, rhythmic sound. So first thing I'm going to do is go to sample, and let's just change the size of this. I need that to loop. So we're getting the sound 3. We can always adjust this later, but it's going to work much better with a kind of constant sound there. And now let's open up the curve editor. I'm also going to change the speed setting to BPM, so it will be synced, and I'll pull that down to half. This will just vary depending on the length of the actual sample you've got. Right, let's split this a few times. So as I'm splitting it, you'll notice there's a grid behind, and I want to kind of group this in kind of 4s and 8s. So straight away we're starting to get something a bit more interesting. If I want to, we can change the shape of this, and that throws around the timing. It's quite interesting. Let's choose a different shape on here. And again, do some more splitting here. I'll split that to a 4. This one I want to make 8, so I'm just going to expand it out. And when you make the range smaller, it stretches across a smaller range of sound, so you don't get so much movement in it. And we want to bring this one in, because it's gone. If we look at the length here, it's over 1. I want to keep it on 1, so everything's synced. You've also got some additional parameters up here. Volume, so to turn the volume up of one particular segment. You've got fade. This will kind of dip the volume slightly. Creates a kind of bouncing effect as well as pan. Now the interesting thing here, once you've created a pattern, is actually you can go back and change where the sample is. Or if you want to, you can change the sample completely. Just going to drop this in, load the sample. See how that sounds with the beat. And it's great for just exploring. It's nice. Different textures, and it's just so easy. So in the next video, what we're going to look at is we'll be using the perform section to create variations as well as some of the other parameters. Remember, you can learn many more music production techniques on the courses we offer at Point Blank in London, Los Angeles and online. Just head to pointblankmusicschool.com to find out more.